Essentially, they're three-sided and the front is open, and they're all very different looking just depending on where you're at. But hikers stay in them a lot of times and they eat in them. So naturally the mice have found them out. I'll just say I remember this one night in the Smoky Mountains specifically. It was the coldest night on trail. I think it was going to be 12 degrees. And there were this shelter probably fit 10 people, but we had 20 people in there because we were just and I remember I had gotten up early that day around 4 a.m. because I wanted to hike up to Klingman's Dome, which is the highest point on the entire trail, to catch sunrise. So I woke up at 4, put on my headlamp, and what do I see? There are feathers everywhere, all over my sleeping bag. And I'm like, what's going on? And I, start stuffing my sleeping bag into its sack. And there was a hole in my sleeping bag. A mouse had chewed a hole through my sleeping bag while I was
Holy
sleeping.
cow.
And I guess burrowed there for warmth. Luckily, I was going to town the next day, so I was able to repair it. It's kind of gross.
You can't take enough food and supplies for the whole entire trip. I mean, you're looking at, a 5-6 month trip total?
Yes.
6 months? Yeah. So when you start, how do you supply yourself or resupply yourself with rations? I'm just curious.
So there's a few different things you can do there. The way that it's broken up, you're going to be the Appalachian Trail will cross a road around every 3 to 6 days. You're going to cross a road that will lead to a town. And so you plan your food based on that. So I'll say, hey, we're in this town and I know the next town is 5 days away, so we're going to need this many breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then I just buy that at the Walmart or Dollar General or gas station there in that town, and that'll get me to the next one. And one other thing you can do throughout the trail, if you know that maybe a town doesn't have a grocery store or, there's just not many good resupply options, you can actually send yourself a package called a mail drop. And what you do is you'll just, I did a little research before the trail and found about 5 towns that were kind of hard to get a sufficient resupply in. And so I filled those packages with 4 or 5 days of food and actually mailed those to either hostels or any kind of post office or anything of that nature that it's in the guidebook so you know where to send them. But then that's a good thing whenever you get to a post office, you have something. My parents specifically sent those, so they would put little goodies and things in there. And I had little notes from friends that, words of encouragement that I'd kind of put in each of my boxes to help just give me some motivation along the trails. That's another thing you can do, but there is sufficient food in each town, so it's not necessary to mail yourself food or anything.
Because that's the one thing I was curious about, how you resupply yourself. When you do cross those roads, did you hitchhike?
Yeah. So sometimes the trail goes right through a town like it does in Damascus. Sometimes the trail is 10 miles from the town and you have to, stick out your thumb and hope someone stops. But these places where the Appalachian Trail cross roads, the people in that area are used to hikers, so they're not alarmed to see 100
someone
people
hitchhiking
a day.
Right.
Yeah, I never had to wait more than 10 minutes for a hit.
Cool.
Girls have an easier time than guys, I will say. Yeah, but I never had any trouble. And whenever you're in a town, so you get to a town, you typically stay at a hostel. And when you stay at a hostel, they organize shuttles to Walmarts or Dollar Generals, things like that, to help you get your resupply. So these trail towns are really set up for the hikers.
You stayed in a shelter some, you stayed in a hostel some. Did you sleep on the ground any or tent camp or what?
Yes, I used a tent. I would say I stayed in a tent 90% of the time. I only stayed in a shelter maybe 5 times. And then I would stay in a hostel or hotel pretty much every time I went to town. So once a week, you go to town, you shower, you do laundry, you get your resupply. Sometimes you can do what's called taking a 0 day where you don't hike any miles at all. Just hang out in town and kind of refresh and get ready for the next week. Your body really needs these days to kind of relax, and you can catch up, get enough calories in, eat a lot of burgers, drink a lot of beer, hang out with your trail buddies. It's honestly so much fun to take a 0 day in town with everyone that you've kind of been hiking the trail with. And then you get back out there the next day.
You mentioned your trail buddies still. I've heard horror stories about how crowded the trail is going through the Smokies headed north. Is that, did you experience that? You said there were 20 people in a shelter. I assume it wasn't just because it was 12 degrees. Some of it was because there's a lot of folks on the trail.
Yeah. Like you said earlier, how we were talking, most people start in Georgia, go to Maine, and you can really only start March, April, because if you start in May, you're getting too close to not making it to Katahdin by the time it closes. If you want to hike the trail, you kind of have to start within this small window of time. And luckily, I was a pretty fast hiker to start out with. We were generally ahead of what's called the bubble, which is the massive group. It could be a party crew almost of people that kind of all start at the same time. So if you're trying to avoid that, I would recommend starting early on in March or later in April, just to kind of avoid that. But yeah, it was definitely very crowded the first, I would say, month on the trail for me. But like I said, I hiked pretty fast. So by the time we were, a month in, it was pretty thinned out and pretty comfortable, I would say.
When you wanted to start hiking this, I assume did you plan out the day and like places you need to be on the trail by a certain day? And if you did that, did you like hold yourself to that? Did you beat yourself up on schedule? Did you feel like you were behind schedule any? Because I know sometimes with me, I would drive myself nuts. Like if I'm driving a vehicle and if I'm driving back to Tennessee, I'm saying, hey, I'm leaving Orlando at 4:00 in the morning. I need to be in Valdosta at 8:30. I need to be in Atlanta at 12:30. I need to be, and I'm like pushing myself. I need to be there by this time. Did you do that with the trail?
So the funny thing is I am an Uber planner and just very over the top when it comes to planning. So in the beginning, I started, reading my guidebooks, researching and trying to plan out all of that. And I had a pretty good plan for everything, I wouldn't say day by day, but maybe like monthly goals of where to get to. After day 2 on the trail, I realized that was out the door because you never know what's going to happen. If you feel like hiking 10 miles in a day, that's okay, do 10 miles. But some days you feel like hiking, 25 or, you just want to do maybe 1 mile into a town and take a 0 day. So you learn very quickly that you can't plan it really. I would just have general estimates so that I made sure I had enough food to get to the next town. But you just, you might come by a lake and you're like, you know what? This is too perfect. I can't pass this up. I'm going to camp here tonight and swim in this lake and enjoy some time with my trail family. So, you don't want to overplan anything because then you don't leave any room for these kind of accidental relationship building that happens that's so special on the trail.
I bet you do walk away with a lot of lifelong friends contacts that you make. You have something in common with those folks now.
Definitely.
Is it true that after you need to set some time apart for doctoring wounds the first 3 weeks?
Yeah. So the best advice that I had heard, because I was already in really good, I would say pretty good shape. Like I was used to, a weekend hiking 30 miles for me wasn't that crazy. So what I did whenever I started out, just to make sure that I wasn't going to be injured, was I would only do no more than 15 miles a day ever in a whole day. And that might sound like a lot to a lot of people, but you're getting up, actually start hiking around 7 a.m. I'd get up at 6, make breakfast, pack up, and start hiking at 7 a.m. And then the sun wouldn't go down generally till 6 or 7. That is a full 12 hours, basically 1 mile an hour,
a little over a mile an hour. So, and that's, if you're walking at a brisk pace in the neighborhood, you can 3 to 4 miles an hour, but nothing like what you were on up and down.
Yeah. So that was one thing I did. And then early on, I would stretch all the time. Stretching became my favorite thing to do. And I thank goodness because I honestly never had a single injury the entire trail. And I
Oh,
mean,
good.
everyone has an injury on the trail. I mean, it's like very rare to come out without a single injury. I mean, I definitely fell and had cuts and scrapes and had bug bites and blisters and, just your normal run of the mill through hiker scars, nothing
No
like,
injuries.
no injuries that would get me off trail, nothing like that. So, and
Yeah.
a
And see,
lot of people,
that's one reason I said what I did. I'm sorry. That's
mhm.
one reason I said what I did, because I've read so many horror stories about folks getting hurt out in the middle
Yeah.
of nowhere like that. So
And
what about bears going through the mountains
yeah.
initially? You see any bear?
Yeah, we sure did. You're gonna see a bear. If you're through hiking, you're gonna see a bear. I don't know how you wouldn't. It's nothing to be afraid of, I would say. I was alone once and heard a bear and saw it climbing up a tree, which it can be kind of scary, I guess, if you're alone, but they're way more afraid of you than you are of them. They're not like the grizzly bears, out in, Wyoming or anything like that. These are, you know, large black bears that are more like a dog than anything. They're not gonna attack unless provoked. So you just kind of give them their space and, take a few pictures and you're on your way.
Yeah. And everything I read, your food storage is most important at night. You pull your food up in a tree.
Yes,
Is that what you do?
yes, that is true. I was going to say that was the only thing I really heard annoying about the bears. They will get into your stuff, but there's only certain areas that they really are problems, and that's through the Smokies mainly. That's the only place that really I heard about bears getting into people's food. But yeah, so you do a bear hang and it's just pretty simple. You have it's just P cord, which is parachute cord. You throw that over a tree, tie your food bag to it and hoist it up into a tree. And then the next morning you get it down and you're good to go.
I'm surprised they haven't figured out how to untie it and let it down, but
yeah, you have to do a pretty good job with it. You got to get it pretty high up there. So whenever you go and hike the trail, if you start in Georgia, they have like a little training class the day that you start, which is so fun. And they can show you the different bear hangs and how you should do that and like leave no trace principles to keep nature clean and free of garbage and things like that. So it's kind of fun. They'll teach you all that.
you said you saw a bear one time by yourself. Did you hike the trail by yourself, or did you hike it with somebody you knew?
So great question. I had made a friend when I was a climbing instructor in New Mexico with a girl that we were pretty good friends. And I said, hey, I'm going to go do this crazy thing. You want to come? And she was like, sounds good. So she joined me. She had a summer job, so she was only able to join me for the first 2 months. But luckily, our first week or so in, we made a trail family of us 2 girls and 3 guys, and we all finished. Besides my friend, but because she had the summer job, but we all finished, and we're still all friends today.
Another question about wildlife. Through the Great Smoky Mountains, I had heard that from whatever reason years ago, there were like longhorn cattle. Are they still there? Or is that like an old tale that I just believed?
It definitely could be true. I can't say I saw one at all, but as you get further up the trail, there are just cows grazing across the trail. I was going to say I think the worst wildlife, well, number one, mosquitoes in the no-see-ums, they will eat you alive, but that's in Vermont. But the worst are the snakes. They're all over the place
Really?
in Pennsylvania. Yeah, they are all over the place. I mean, I almost stepped on a rattlesnake one day. They're just everywhere. I mean, through Pennsylvania, we saw at least 2 snakes a day.
Is it like real rocky? Like where the trail goes through Pennsylvania? Is it
very
like, okay.
rocky? Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You'll hear through hikers say that their least favorite state is Pennsylvania. It's just there's no trail. It's just rocks, and you're just scrambling over rocks all day.
So now I don't want to go. You mentioned snakes. I don't want to go now.
It's only Pennsylvania, I promise. It's not that bad.
Yep.
You can make it through.
What little bit of knowledge I have about the trail, by no means am I an expert or even nowhere near one, but we talked about the up and downs out of Georgia, Springer Mountain, Great Smoky Mountains, and then my understanding that when it comes out of the Great Smoky Mountains, it kind of levels off, kind of goes along the North Carolina Tennessee border, and you're up on the mountain the whole way, or for a good